Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see so many people here. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to all our guest speakers for speaking for this webinar, and thank you to the participants attending this webinar. Really hope this talk will make a difference to your life because you can change the world with your diet. I am Chandni Sucheti, and I'm the founder of Lives Thou Nice. Lives Thou Nice is a student-led campaign led by Fontaine Gibbs and I. It's based in Hong Kong. So it's supported by and funded by Kids for Kids, and it's mentored by Peggy Chan and Joel Thomas. A little bit about how this campaign started is growing up, I've always been a vegetarian due to religious reasons and the belief that animals deserve to live. And since I was young, I've always wanted to advocate against animal agriculture and behind the process of meat consumption. But I always felt I was too young to make a difference until I attended a Kids for Kids event called Powered by Youth, and they encouraged us, the youth, to step up and make a change in any aspect of our community. Therefore, to start this campaign for change, for global change towards a much healthier, sustainable, and environmentally friendly lifestyle. We are motivated by a vision of absolute compassion, justice, and protection of our environment. And our primary approach to this vision is to simplify, advocate, and implement a plant-based lifestyle starting within Hong Kong. Hence, this webinar is our first step towards making a change in our community. So today with us, we have 5 guest speakers. We have Peggy Chan and Joel Thomas. Peggy is the founder of Grassroots Initiatives. We have Sonali Figueiras, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Green Queen. We have Vivian Kong, who's the first Hong Kong fencer to win a World Cup title. And we have Bopsy Gaya, who's the founder of Mana Hong Kong. They will all be sharing their experiences, causes for turning vegan, and how we can help. So without further ado, let's start. So we will now start with our first guest speakers, Peggy Chan and Joel Thomas. A little background on who they are is Peggy Chan is the founder of Grassroots Initiatives in Hong Kong with a mission to raise awareness and share knowledge on the benefits of plant-based cuisine. As chef and owner, Peggy Chan emerged as the region's most authoritative voice on organic sourcing and sustainable food systems. She is also an amazing mentor to Lives Thou Nice. Let's welcome Peggy Chan and Joel Thomas.
Yay. Hi everyone. So I'll just quickly talk about my journey. So I turned plant-based about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, 5 years. Just looking more into the food that I was eating and where it was coming from.
I'm Peggy. Hi everyone, and thank you to my friends for all joining the webinar. So I turned, I would say my journey also kind of spanned within 20 years. And I started with cutting out red meat, cows and pigs when I was a teenager like yourself. It was very much for animal welfare reasons and for partial religious reasons. I felt better. From a health perspective, I felt calmer as a person just by eliminating meat in my diet. So slowly, within about 5 years, I started to cut out poultry and poultry and fish as well. And so in the last 10 to 12 years, I've become fully vegetarian. So the reason why I went into it, I mean, I just mentioned animal welfare was one of the main reasons, and that was in year 2000. But when the internet came about and when I started to go to university, I started to investigate into the systems and how broken it is. And now we talk about it a lot, which is great. I think with the internet, we're able to really expose a lot of the problems that were previously hidden behind glass walls, they call it. Which is the slaughterhouse. But now there's really no more hiding. And so I think it's really a great time for us to mobilize and to share that information and to encourage people to make the decisions to cut out animal factory farming and cut out inhumane practices and source more ethically.
If all that comes out of this is, you know, we wash our hands a little bit more and we're wearing face masks, like nothing's really changed if we're not questioning where the food's coming from, who the suppliers are.
Thank you for your talk, Peggy and Joel. We hope everyone found that as amazing as we did. Now we have Sonali Figueras. Sonali is the founder and editor-in-chief of Green Queen Media, which is named as Asia's largest eco-wellness media platform promoting social and environmental change. She is also the founder and CEO of Eco Warehouse, which is the global sourcing platform for certified organic products. Sonali has also launched a podcast series about the hashtag zero waste movement and plastic pollution. Let's welcome Sonali.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, especially on the go. It's awesome to be here. So thank you, Peggy, and thank you, ladies, for inviting me. I think the message that I really want to share today is that food is something that unites the whole world. It's completely universal. I obviously run a media company. My job is, I call Green Queen an impact media platform because my job is to change people's minds and change people's behaviors. But as much as I can do that on many different subjects, nothing is as powerful as food, because food is something we all need to, we all have to eat. Whether we actually care about what we eat or whether we like eating, doesn't matter. We all have to eat to survive. Unfortunately, there still aren't, well, fortunately for me, but some people are looking forward to a world where we just eat pills, but at the end of the day, we're not there yet and we have to eat. And so for me, food is both universal in that everyone eats and everyone needs to eat, but also food is incredibly political. And I think that's the message that I'm always trying to share, because every time you eat, you're voting, you're making a choice, you're saying who you are, you're showing what your values are. And I think that's what I really want to try to tell people. And so, because a lot of people say to me, you know, sustainability, climate change, the whole thing, it feels too big, it feels too overwhelming. I'm just one person, what can I do? And I think what's really come out of the last couple of years of research and information is that the most important thing you can do for the planet, the most important thing, this is more than not flying or using less electricity, or quitting single-use plastic. The most important thing you can do is to reduce meat and dairy consumption. And so once that link was made by, you know, pretty much every scientist, incredibly, every time you eat, you can do something for the planet. And I just really spend my time trying to explain and share and raise awareness around the fact that, you know, whenever you pick up that fork, you are making a choice. You are voting for the world that you want. And I think once I'm able, and we're able, all of us, to get people to see that, then most people are good and want to do good, and so then they make the choices that are more sustainable. And the other thing is, and I think we just don't talk about this enough, is it feels so good to eat plant-based. Like, you just feel lighter as a person. I just think that you just feel happier, you feel lighter. And I don't mean weight, I just mean, I don't know, physiologically, mentally. And so that's how I've ended up on where I am now.
Thank you so much for that. I hope everyone found that as inspiring as we did. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I do read a lot of your articles about Beyond Meat and like all the plant-based meat. But one thing I want to ask, like, is it really a great idea to, I mean, sure, yes, it's okay. It's a great idea for those who consume meat on a regular basis to switch to plant-based meat, so that, like, you know, that they can still enjoy the meaty texture that they would wish. But do you think overall it's a good idea to consume plant-based meat as, like, you know, frequently and such, because it's made with a lot of chemicals and, you know, all that, from what I've researched?
Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods are incredibly important tools to reduce our reliance on industrially farmed meat and dairy. And we need to do that. We need to do that right now, because let me just give you a very kind of scary fact. Today, if everyone on the planet ate a diet that was the same as a US-based citizen's diet. We literally actually cannot support that today. The planet does not have the resources, the water, the land, the everything. We don't have the planet to support that. So we need to immediately get most of the world to start transitioning off meat and dairy. And seafood is a whole other game, and we could get into that another time. But essentially, as a result, we need tools. And I think Impossible Meat and Beyond Meat and all of these OmniPork and all of these products, they provide options for people.
I agree with Sonali. It is a perfect tool for people to really get on board that there are options. And then now it's up to us as chefs to be able to start seeking out all of those options that are out there in the natural world.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonali, for that really insightful talk. I hope everyone could learn from that. Sonali, we have one more question for you in the chat box. Someone has asked, how can we use your Green Queen platform to easily transform to a plant-based diet? What's the first step?
Oh, well, you know, we have different sections. I would say the first thing you can do is we have an amazing ebook that we just published that's basically 63 Asian plant-based recipes that we developed for people who live in Hong Kong. But I think the most important thing is to set yourself realistic goals. So basically, I would say start with Green Monday, and then do Green Tuesday, and then do Green Wednesday, and maybe get somebody in your family or a friend to get involved with you, and start tracking how you feel, and start making it fun. If you want to get in the kitchen, get in the kitchen. If you prefer going out, you know, find these awesome vegan and vegetarian restaurants, and just, you know, that's how you should do it. But don't overwhelm yourself. I think starting with realistic once a week, then twice a week goals is great.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Sonali.
Thank you.
Now we have our next guest speaker, Vivian Kong. Vivian Kong is a national vegan fencer. She is Hong Kong's leading female fencer, and she's one of few Hong Kong's athletes to be ranked #1 in an Olympic sport. She is also the first Hong Kong fencer to win a World Cup. Last year, she was ranked #1 in the world for women's épée. Let's welcome Vivian Kong.
Hi everyone, thank you Labs Without Knives, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this panel, and I've always just been trying to work really hard as an athlete and then win some medals so that I can have a voice and use this voice to promote plant-based diet, and that, look, like I'm fine, I'm healthy, I have all the protein, I can still win, because coming from an Asian family, meat has been always a very like meat-oriented diets in our culture, and so many of my family members have had trouble like understanding or just even thinking that it's possible to be an athlete and not have meat. So I'm a full-time fencer, and it's a combat sport. We have to fight, and I thought to become as strong as I can be, both physically and mentally, I decided to turn vegan. So I think what also led me towards a plant-based diet was I got more into Buddhism, and Buddhist teachings really resonated with me. I really liked the focus on compassion and appreciation for nature and life, and I wanted to be more mindful of my actions. And not eating meat was the first step to value life and reduce suffering and contribute my part for the environment. And I had a record-breaking healing rehab process. I was, I think, the fastest person to heal from an ACL. And then I broke my own record last year. I recovered even faster from my second injury. And other than having like a really successful surgery and all the training with my physio and trainers, I think being vegan really helped, because I was just so much more fit, so much, a lot quicker, and my fencing also improved a lot. And I think I just felt more aligned with like my values, and also just being really, like, I felt even more motivated to prove that I can be a fencer and do even better on a plant-based diet here. And the same for this pandemic. Like, we must have done something wrong collectively as humans to have such bad karma and that we have to learn from all this and what can we do better once this is all over. Now this pandemic also makes us feel like we're all in this together, but this time it's not sports, it's just how the idea that like how fragile life can be, and that we have to do something to make our environment or like our world a better place. This is really cheesy, vegan cheesy. Anyways, and then this, it's just that, so then I've thought a lot more about what I can do as an athlete, because now that the Olympics are postponed, I have to use my voice to really speak out about what we can do. And the first step is to have a more plant-based diet, and that that we can do something, like even though we might think that there's just, we feel a little bit hopeless sometimes with all this uncertainty, but there is something we can do, and that I don't have to be afraid to use my voice to spread this message. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Vivian. That was really inspiring, and I hope everyone learned something from that. I had a question for you. So a lot of times I get asked that, why do a lot of athletes choose to go for a meat-consuming diet? Like, since there's so much research going on that, in fact, a plant-based diet is actually better for athletes, why is it that there's still so many people who think that protein only comes from meat? What would you say to them?
I think it's our culture. It's also easier, they think, and also the way nutrition has been taught. Like our nutritionists they were all worried, like coaches and everyone was like, oh, you need to take regular blood tests. Like, are you getting enough protein? Like, they were all worried about protein, even though there's so much research. And now I actually have the best numbers, I think, out of like all the athletes, because we pay more attention to nutrition. And there's like an idea where, oh, if I'm eating meat, I don't have to worry about my nutrition, or like that I'm having a balanced diet. But in fact, because I'm vegan, I have to pay more attention, and I'm actually a lot healthier. And it's just even at our sport, Hong Kong, we train at a Hong Kong Sports Institute where all the athletes train. It's still the diet. They still use the pyramid, and it's still, there's always a meat dish and the veggie dish, and we rarely get a vegan dish. So I'm really lucky I get to have my mom cook for me, but they're starting to change. The nutritionist just told me that so many athletes have been asking him about possibly like turning plant-based and how that's changed and improved their performance.
That's great. So a plant-based diet has actually fueled your victories, would you say?
Yes, definitely. Because before I turned, so when I was still pescatarian, I never won a single gold medal on the international level. And then I got injured, and I was like, no, I really have to come back and win something. And I was also vegan, and my family and my cousins were like, you'll never win if you don't eat meat. And I was like, no, I'm not going to eat, and then I'm going to try to win. And then at the next competition, I won. So it was a very big motivation.
Wow, that's great to hear about your perseverance in a vegan diet. Does anyone have any questions specifically for Vivian? We'll be discussing the general questions after all the guest speakers have talked. Okay, then we'll go with our next guest speaker. We have Bobsy Gaya. So Bobsy Gaya is the founder of Mana Hong Kong, in which he runs 3 restaurants under the Mana umbrella, all of which of these support the zero food waste philosophy. He is a passionate eco-entrepreneur, and he wrote and produced a documentary, Save the Human, Don't Eat the Planet, on the environmental impact of the meat and dairy industry. This documentary has won the Best Documentary Award at the iShout Hong Kong Film Festival. He also runs a show, Breakfast with Bobsy, where he chats with influencers and change makers in Hong Kong community. Let's welcome Bobsy Gaya.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's great to be here. It's good to be here, as we say in Mana, and especially amongst inspiring people like Peggy and Joel and Sonali and Vivian. And anyway, where to begin? I mean, if humanity doesn't change its diet, in other words, if humanity doesn't change how it grows, produces, distributes, and feeds itself, we're doomed. Simply put, over 50% of all the world's pollution, contamination of soil, air, depletion of oceans, overfishing, deforestation, soil erosion, desertification, displacement of indigenous cultures, displacement of indigenous communities, destruction of the rainforests, especially the Amazon, and now what's happening in Papua New Guinea as well, and Central Africa. These are the lungs of the world. And the list goes on and on and on and on. It just impacts every human activity, every human endeavor, every human culture. And it's devastating. And I'm not just talking about animals, I'm talking about humans specifically. So our diets are responsible for over 50% of what we call global warming, or what we call now the global crisis. Over 50%. And if we can get that number into our hearts and into our minds, then we will switch diets like that. And the main culprit behind this Armageddon that's destroying humanity and our planet as we know it is the consumption of meat, fish, and dairy. So we need to reduce our consumption of meat, fish, and dairy yesterday. It's imperative we do that. So ideally, we all switch to a plant-based diet and we can live sustainably and feed 20 billion people without a problem. The knife and the fork are the most powerful tools in the hands of humanity today, or the chopsticks or the spoon are the most powerful tools in the hands of humanity today, because what we eat has the biggest impact on our happiness, on our well-being, on the state of the environment, on our ecosystems, on all of creation. The real change can happen when we change our diets and move away from eating animals and move towards eating plants. That means nuts and seeds and vegetables and fruits and whole foods. This is where the real change is happening. And the good news is that this growth is exponential. In fact, it's the fastest growing movement. We know humanity has never seen such a fast growing movement of people changing their minds about the state of the world and their well-being and their role they play in it. This global awakening is the fastest growing movement in the known history of humanity. So there is nothing more positive happening in the world than this. It is the most positive thing happening. And it's happening exponentially. That means it's doubling all the time. And therein lies the hope. And that's why I've been waking up hopeful for 30 years now, every morning, because I'm paying attention to all the positive things the good people are doing. I'm paying attention to all the positive news in the world. We have no time for negative news. We have no time for negative people. If they don't like what we're doing, get out of the way. We're trying to save the planet here. Get out of our way. You don't like what we're doing, step aside. So let's focus on all the positive things happening in the world. And in Hong Kong, there's a lot of positive things too. So you decide what you want to watch. You decide what you want to listen to, who you want to read, what movies, what documentaries. You know, we are changing the world and it's wonderful. It's good stuff.
Great. Thank you so much for that. That was very inspirational, and I hope everyone found it as inspirational as I did. Now we will move on to answering questions. Does anyone have any specific questions for Wobsy? If so, please unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat box. So far, there aren't any, but there are general questions that I think any of the guest speakers can answer. So we'll now start answering those. Is being a vegetarian enough? Does anyone want to answer that? Or me and Fontaine would be happy to answer as well.
I think being a vegan is enough. It's more than enough. Because if over 50% of the world's destruction is coming from eating animals, then by changing your diet, you're changing the world and changing yourself, of course, and changing all the people around you. So what could be more important than losing our planet as we know it? If all it requires is to change your diet, there's nothing more simple. because it's so easy now to eat plant-based. It's getting easier and easier and easier all over the world, everywhere, you know, compared to 20 years ago. So what is more important? I can't think of anything else.
Yep, great, thank you. And something to add on as well is that to directly answer the question, yes, being vegetarian is quite helpful to the planet in terms of eliminating zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that come from, like, that transmit from animals to humans, such as COVID-19. And it also is quite beneficial for reducing the effects of climate change. But I feel like the next step for vegetarian is to try to transition to veganism, as the cruelty that is done on animals in the process of making milk or cheese is just unimaginable. How the animals are kept in cages that are very stuffed, and there's blood, there's sweat, there's everything. It's very dirty over there, and the animals eventually get killed after they are milked to their potential. So obviously the next step would be to be a vegan, but again, everything's about the small steps. You can't just go from one day being a meat eater to being a vegan. It's important to take it slowly so it's not overwhelming. Like Sonali has said before, you can start with Green Monday, then you can go to Green Tuesday, and take slow steps. Even if it takes a few years, a few months, few days, it's your journey. You can choose how much time you want to take and how you want to get there. So our next question is, if we switch to a plant-based diet, won't we lack in some vital nutrients that are present in animal products?
The only thing you will lack is cholesterol and heart disease and, you know, rheumatism and arthritis and all sorts of degenerative diseases. That's the only thing you will lack. Come on. No, you won't lack anything if you eat a well-balanced diet.
But you do need to do a little bit of research into what a well-balanced diet looks like, whether you're a vegan or an omnivore. To be really honest, I think these are false dichotomies that people have. They say, oh, well, you know, if I stop eating meat, am I not going to be healthy? Who says you're healthy today just because you eat meat? This idea that meat and dairy are healthy is just wrong. It's propaganda. It's lobbying. It's not real. I mean, we you know, the idea, for example, that eating consuming milk gives you calcium is actually nonsense. Actually, it's the opposite. Consuming calcium actually leaches. Consuming dairy leaches calcium from your bones. And countries where they have a high consumption of dairy, for example, the Nordic countries in Europe, also have high levels of osteoporosis. So, I mean, we've also been given a lot of wrong information about the food that we eat. So I think your assumptions when you ask questions like that, like whether it's, you know, you're going to lose nutrition when you quit meat. Who's nutrition today? Fed cow is pretty gross in your body. It's not doing good things for you.
Yeah, and all the antibiotics and the medicines, the drugs that are given to animals in animal farming, in industrial animal farming. Because if you don't give antibiotics and drugs to these poor creatures, they will die of suffocation and dehydration and malnutrition and diseases that are rampant, you know. So we have to pump these animals with a lot of drugs, not to mention everything else, the fear they experience, the emotions, the loss of family members, the suffering, all of that. You end up eating that in your meat, fish, and dairy, because everything is interconnected. We live in an interconnected
That's why I
universe.
think you feel lighter.
Yeah.
I do think.
So yeah, I mean, I think people just need to do a bit of self-education and research and find out, you know, the facts are out there and the scientific studies are out there, and what's happening to our planet is visible to all of us now.
Yes, for sure. There are lots of documentaries anyone can watch as well. My personal favorites are Cowspiracy and Game Changers. Cowspiracy is about climate change and is about the link to climate change and just a lot of the bad things that animal agriculture does to the earth. And Game Changers is about how meat consumption meat consumption is actually detrimental to your health, and athletes do much better in a plant-based diet, as I'm sure Vivian has experienced. So our next question now is, it is probably harder for the older generation to change. What baby steps can we take?
Bobsy, that's for you. You're the older generation.
Yes, I am. I think it's never too late to change, whether it's changing your lifestyle or changing your diet or changing your assumptions and changing your values and principles.
Yep, great, thanks. There's one more question. What is the link between climate change and meat consumption?
At Green Queen, we have so many articles about this. And I mean, you can look at it, basically, it's pretty clear. It's about emissions. Climate change is caused by emissions, carbon emissions, and other greenhouse gas emissions. And a meat diet is the most emission-heavy choice you make, meat and dairy. And that's why, in the last couple of years, there's been such an understanding that if you go plant-based, you're doing it's the most powerful thing you can do for the planet. So it's about emissions.
And there's something, something I share in my talks, and it's one graphic. If you can imagine, close your eyes and imagine this. The total human population is no more than 8 billion people, right? That's humanity. 7.5, 7.6, let's say 8 billion people living on planet Earth today. The number of industrially farmed animals that we produce and grow to eat, that means all the cows, the chickens, the pigs, the fish, all the industrially farmed animals, their total population today is 100 billion. So there are 100 billion animals to feed. So to understand the climate crisis and diet change, not climate change, is where is the food coming from to feed 100 billion hungry animals? Where are we growing this food? At what expense? On what land? So there, with those two numbers, 100 billion versus 8 billion, you will understand climate change and the global crisis. Yeah. How on earth can you feed 100 billion cows when we can't feed 1 billion of our brothers and sisters in the world who are dying from malnutrition? So yeah, it's all upside down here.
More data, if you're on the data side of things, is that currently today, and these are old numbers, so it's actually worse now, 45% of all land on the earth is used for the livestock industry. 45%. So almost 50% of all our land goes to growing meat. And that is because they need land to live on. And that is also because they need incredible amounts of feed. 35% is just to grow their feed. So imagine if we used all that feed, corn, soy, whatever, and started using that food to feed humans. First of all, we'd have a food surplus because we actually could feed everyone. And second of all, we wouldn't have all the other negative byproducts of all these hundreds of millions of animals, as Bobsy has pointed out.
Yeah. And as an enlightened being once said, there are three things that can't be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So the truth is coming out. And the dominant system today wants to distract us, wants to hide it, wants to negate it. But it's your generation now that is bringing out this truth. And once we understand the truth, then we are empowered to change. It's called knowledge. Once we have knowledge, we become more empowered. We become stronger. We become more clear on our mission. And once we live and experience our knowledge, it becomes wisdom. And this is how we change the world. And indeed, this is how we are changing the world.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, everyone. So now we want to discuss together about 3 steps that everyone can take to make a difference that are easy and sustainable so that like literally anyone can easily make a difference. So what would you guys suggest the 3 steps anyone can take?
I think we can practice mindfulness and especially when we make a choice, whether it's food, how you use your money, what you watch, like what Stopsy said about like consuming media that's positive, or what makes you feel better. Because I think now the atmosphere is a little tense, and we focus on ourselves. So what we can do to make ourselves feel better, and maybe you can try a plant-based diet, and please try, because it will make you feel so much better mentally, physically, and you'll win World Cups. Okay.
Well, I would say, and this is one that might take a bit of personal research, is to shift your value system. So one of the first things that, and I see it in the next question in the chat box, is, are organic foods expensive? And I get that question a lot. Yes, in comparison to conventional, on a dollar basis, it's more expensive. But are we actually seeing all of the external costs that's involved and the damage that we're causing to our planet? And also, what about your medical bills down the line? So are we actually factoring all of those costs as well? So, we got to think about what that value system is. Would I be putting more money into sourcing more clean foods that I and my family eat, or should I get the cheapest food just so to, feed myself?
One thing I would like to say would be very helpful for all of us to do is to be quiet with ourselves every day, is to spend a little bit of time in what you might call meditation, or just sitting quietly with yourself, especially in the morning when you wake up, maybe 5 minutes, and just be thankful. Be thankful, ask for gratitude, share your gratitude and forgiveness, forgiving others who've hurt you, perhaps forgiving people you've hurt, and also forgiving ourselves. These are wonderful practices we can do that take 5 minutes every day. And this makes a whole difference to our attitude, to how we perceive life, to how we interact with life, to how we move through our busy days. So a bit of quiet time with oneself in the morning. There's many, many traditions of many, many ways of doing this, but essentially that would be something very powerful I would like to share with people. It's something all of us can do. It doesn't cost any money. We just sit with ourselves quietly.
Yep, for sure. Everything you guys have said is totally correct, and I think everyone can do better by practicing mindfulness. So me and Fontaine would like to just wrap up the session now, and we'd want to give everyone 3 steps they can take to transition to a plant-based diet. Fontaine, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we've covered a lot today from our guest speakers. So thank you all so much for coming and sharing your perspectives with us. It's been really insightful, and it's great to hear from people from all walks of life, like restaurant owners and athletes. And I think 2 of the main takeaway points that I heard from you guys today is, not only is there a huge impact on the environment if you transition to a more plant-based diet, but it also transforms how you feel and your ethics, so how you feel about yourself. And that has been really cool to hear. As for the 3 steps, as Vivian said, you can try a more plant-based diet and try Meatless Mondays, or try the green cream recipes, which Sonali has mentioned to us. And as Bobsy said, we can also be more, and Peggy and Joel as well, we can be more mindful about the ethics around meat consumption and what does that really mean? What is the true cost? So it has been really great to hear from you all.
I'd like to share a quote by the late Nelson Mandela, which is quite apt for ending our little chat here. And Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it is done."
In touch, you can follow us on Instagram at Lives Without Knife, and we have regular blog posts that are connected to our Instagram, which you can use to learn a bit more about sustainable eating. So we hope, sorry?
Even in our daily posts, we include like inspiration, tips, recipes. So even if you just follow it, you very likely that you learn more about a plant-based diet and why you should adopt it.
Yeah. So we hope to keep in touch with you there. And if you've got any feedback about our webinar or suggestions on what you'd like to hear from us, we'd love to hear from you. Please DM us.
Yeah. So
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
All our guest speakers, Peggy, Joe, Vivian, Bobsy, and Sonali.
And Pluto.
I like the cat.
Adopt, don't shop.
Adopt, don't shop. Right, correct.
Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in, and we hope that this made a difference to your lives. And always remember, you can change the world with your diet.